And so because she did not respond, I thought it would be good to play a video where she, in her own words, is talking about the Meals Act. And so in lieu of her testimony, we're going to hear from Representative Omar herself from a video that she recorded for Somali TV, and it will have subtitles so we can all understand it. And that was from the spring of 2020.
Okay. So here's what happened. Ilhan Omar had what people are calling a complete meltdown on camera, except she wasn't even physically there, and somehow, that's the most revealing part of the whole situation. If you're new here, my name is Tira, and this channel dives into the stories the mainstream media won't touch. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because this one is gaining traction fast, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's break it down. A congressional hearing is taking place in Minnesota. The issue on the table? A staggering $250 million in alleged federal nutrition fraud, money meant for children's meals and pandemic relief. Instead, investigators say it was diverted into luxury cars, high-end real estate, and restaurant schemes involving six-figure sums. During the hearing, Representative Kristen Robbins steps forward and explains that she personally invited Ilhan Omar to attend and respond. According to Robbins, multiple attempts were made, 2 voicemails, 2 formal letters, and even a submission through an official scheduling portal, and the response, nothing. No reply. No acknowledgement. Total silence. Now pause and think about that. This is someone who is usually front and center, never hesitant to speak publicly, always ready to engage with the media, and quick to address issues of accountability and justice. But when faced with questions directed at her in this situation, there was no appearance, no statement, just unanswered outreach, and that's where things start to raise eyebrows.
Make it easier for families to get access to food during the pandemic. And I do plan to follow up with her staff or her directly if she would provide testimony on the record or in a written response about, why she brought that, how that actually materially affected the ability of restaurants like Safari, where this video was filmed, which was the #1 meal site sponsor in all of the Feeding Our Future site sponsors. They got $12 million and they were later indicted. So I think understanding her role in this is very important for the history of understanding this case. And with that, I'll leave it at that.
Madam Chair, just a quick question about that.
Yes, Lee Pinto.
So I saw Congressman Stauber voted for that bill as well. Are you planning to bring him in as well, Madam Chair?
He wasn't the author of the bill.
Okay.
So I think she was the author of the bill, and she brought that to this larger coronavirus relief package. And so I think understanding her intention and her communication with MDE over that issue and with the Department of Agriculture and the feds, I think there's still many unanswered questions about that. So I look forward to following up with her office on that.
And Madam Chair, just quickly, I had the sense from looking at the video that her intention was, it seemed pretty clear, which was to make sure that the kids are fed. I don't know if there's sort of more detail you're looking for in particular beyond that, but it seemed sort of clear to me. But I guess we'll see if she's got more to say regarding that.
Absolutely,
so, yeah.
And I do think that was at least her stated intention in the video. But the video was filmed at Safari Restaurant, which was now charged and convicted for participating in the fraud. And at the time in the video, she references 2,300 meals a day. They eventually got to, I believe, 6,000 or 7,000 meals a day, which defies understanding. And so they were clearly involved with her and her promoting Safari from the beginning. And I think understanding that relationship is part of understanding the larger context of how this happened in Minnesota specifically. Other states didn't see the level of nutrition fraud that we did. And so I do look forward to exploring that question. I think it's important for the history of understanding the larger context. Okay. So with that, we also did send an invitation to Attorney General Ellison's office requesting his testimony today, and he also declined to come, and he sent a letter which was publicly released last night at 5 p.m. So that was the first response we got from him, was last night at 5 p.m. And I had also sent a different data request to his office related to Medicaid fraud, which I still have not had a response to on March 6th. So the Attorney General declined to come, saying he had already testified once, and this isn't his jurisdiction because he doesn't have original jurisdiction in these cases, only in Medicaid cases, and that if, we wanted to have prosecutions, it would come from the county attorney or from the feds, and so he really doesn't have anything to add. Although he hastened to say he is doing a small claims case today, so clearly he has civil jurisdiction in all of these fraud cases, and I find it incredibly frustrating that the Attorney General declined to come, because for today's discussion, when we're talking with MDE, he was the lawyer for MDE during this time. And so he absolutely had responsibility for advising and representing the state of Minnesota, and that he very disrespectfully declined to come and said he had nothing to do with this is unconscionable. And I'm very disappointed. It is beneath his office to have responded that way. I know you have something to say, Lee Pinto.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, all I'm going to say is just that the letter that he sent, we'll just ask that it be put on the committee's website, and folks can read the letter for themselves. He does provide background regarding, as I read it anyway, regarding his role, including talking about how he was representing MD's office and working very hard to cut off funding to the fraudsters. But again, folks can read it for themselves. We'll just ask to be posted. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we will post it. And it's also, he put it on his own Twitter page yesterday, so it's been out there for a few hours. And I would like just to note for the record, since we're putting things on the record, and I will make sure these are added as well, that the Attorney General has had very conflicting statements on his involvement in Feeding Our Future. And so when the first announcements were coming out in September of 2022, he put out a statement, quote, he and his office have been, quote, deeply involved for 2 years in holding Feeding Our Future accountable. This was September of 2022. And, quote, I'm not seeing it, but he claims that, oh yes, here it is. MDE and the Attorney General's office brought their suspicions of fraud to the FBI and fully cooperated with the investigation that they jump-started. And so he's saying this in February of 2022, but then when he comes to testify in our committee last year in April of 2025, he then follows up with, when there had been a recording about him meeting with the Feeding Our Future, some of whom were later defendants, in December of 2021, and we discussed that with him. He put out an op-ed saying, in January of 2022, a month after his meeting with the people involved in Feeding Our Future and that recording, my office got our first indication from the FBI of the scale of Feeding Our Future's illegal conduct. So in 2022, he's saying they led and they brought it forward and they were in charge. And then in April of 2025, he said, oh, we had no idea. We got our first indication in January of 2022, right when the warrants came out. So his contradictory statements on this.
Because Robbins didn't just make an accusation, she brought evidence. She played a video. An actual clip of Ilhan Omar on Somali TV, standing inside the Safari restaurant, publicly promoting the very business that later received $12 million in federal food program funds, and was eventually indicted for fraud. On camera.it doesn't get more direct than that. Now, Omar's supporters will argue that her goal was to help feed children during the pandemic. Fair enough, let's accept that for a moment. But here's the issue: she authored the Meals Act, legislation that removed key eligibility safeguards from the federal nutrition program. Requirements like on-site meal consumption and individual verification were stripped away, effectively creating an open pipeline for funds, and while other states reported relatively contained levels of misuse, Minnesota ended up with one of the largest fraud cases in the country. Coincidence? Robbins clearly doesn't think so, and the situation doesn't stop there. It's not just Omar who declined to appear. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, the state's top law enforcement official, also refused to attend the hearing. This is the same office that represented the state agency overseeing the program in question. Instead of showing up, Ellison sent a letter at 5 p.m. the night before, stating that the matter wasn't under his jurisdiction. Timing like that raises questions on its own, but Robbins anticipated this. During the hearing, she read Ilhan's own prior statements into the record. Back in 2022, he publicly stated that his office played a significant role in the investigation, saying they helped bring concerns to the FBI and were instrumental in moving the case forward. Fast forward to April 2025, under oath, and his position appeared to shift. He stated that his office only became aware of the issue after federal warrants were issued. Those are two very different accounts. So the question becomes, which version is accurate, because they can't both be true. This is why the situation is drawing attention, not necessarily because of what's been proven, but because of the inconsistencies, the absences, and the unanswered questions surrounding a very large amount of public money. At its core, this comes down to accountability. Who knew what, when they knew it, and how they responded. That's why this hearing matters. And that's why people are paying attention.